Welcome to Inspired by Design, the podcast where we explore the tools, stories, and insights to help you rediscover your authentic self and navigate life with less resistance. I'm Katie Rupert, a former hustle and grind overachiever on a thrilling and messy journey. I love to share what I'm learning and help others in self-discovery using human design. So if you're seeking a way to move forward, let me be your weekly mindset coach and share stories to inspire you to action towards your unique purpose without the force or burnout. All right, welcome back. Today we have Eric Rosen, manifesting generator with sacral authority. He leads with a 4-6 profile in human design. But more importantly, I want to introduce Eric as a boardroom astrologer. He's a shamanic guide and a spiritual advisor for visionary leaders who help entrepreneurs and purpose-driven professionals move from feeling stuck and frustrated to gaining clarity, vitality, and renewed direction. Using astrology alongside his shamanic practices and other intuitive tools, Eric helps people see the bigger picture of what's unfolding in their lives so they can transform challenges into opportunities for growth, healing, and innovation. Today, we're going to look at the astrology for the rest of 2026, what themes are unfolding collectively, and how each of us can work the energy instead of against it. So, Eric, welcome. Thanks for being on Inspired by Design.
Thanks for having me, Katie. It's great to be here.
Yeah, you bet. I've been really excited. I love astrology. I'm an astrology nerd that just knows not enough, but I can be pretty dangerous and sound like I know what I'm talking about. But I would love to start with your story. Everyone has their own path into this work, this world. And so I'd love to know a little bit about you, whatever you feel called to share with us. And tell us what drew you first to astrology and, of course, spiritual guidance, or how your relationship even evolved. Take it away.
Yeah. I started off as a construction project manager. That was my pathway out of college. Very left brain, very logical. If you would have told me back then that I'd be in this world, I'd be like, I joined a cult, I drank the Kool-Aid, what? But here I am because it's amazeballs. So what happened was, after my career kind of like hit this lull, there was a layoff. I got into, of all things, seemed inappropriate at the time, trying to figure my life out, a romantic relationship. And this woman was really spiritual. And I'd heard about things spiritually, but I really didn't want to go down that route because I was very much like, let me focus on the physical nature of life, money, the self-development of like my body, my supplementation, my workouts, just like very physical, masculine, not thinking about any possibilities in the unseen world. Wasn't on my radar, did not open Pandora's box. So it got opened in that relationship. And I'm like, oh, you mean pendulums are real? Like the stuff in astrology horoscopes, there's actually accuracy to that. And she introduced me to an astrologer that she was following. And at first I'm just like, oh no, this guy is weird. And then the relationship ended, and then I'm looking for answers. I'm like, oh yeah, there's that weird astrologer guy that she introduced me to. Let me go listen to his stuff. And I was amazed at not only the accuracy, but there would be times like he had an app where I would be thinking about something and he would send out an app notification to all his subscribers, and it would literally be that exact thing I was thinking about in that moment. I'm like, what is going on here? Was only following him for about 2 weeks before he announced an astrology school. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Most fun I'd ever had learning anything in my life. Like it didn't even feel like school. And once I learned all the nuts and bolts basics of it and stopped trying to read exactly in the way that he did and just started to trust my own flow and my own intuition, that's where things really started to resonate. People were starting to come to me for readings. And then there was just a cascade of other intuitive gifts and abilities that started to just unlock over time, and different modalities like coming in and being able to do energy work for people, being able to do past life regression. So yeah, it's been an awesome journey.
Oh, I have so many questions. Okay. Let's start backwards. So
Sure.
for our listeners, so the audience that I'm finding with Inspired by Design is spiritually curious people who maybe have grown up with religion, or they feel like they don't quite fit into that same container that they knew was the quote unquote right answer.
Yeah.
And now they've taken the lid off, but they're not sure where to go with it. So you and I have been experiencing this world, astrology and human design. Past life regression, I remember that being a completely foreign concept to me. So how would you describe that to someone who had never heard of that before?
Yeah. So, like that, for example, is the concept that this is not the only incarnation lifetime that we've had, that we have other past lives that came before this. And there's different schools of thought in it. Some people believe that we actually did exist as certain other people in past lives. Some believe that we may just be tapping into this idea that there are certain memories that are stored in the cellular level of the DNA connected to family ancestral trees, that there's these crazy remembrances of that lineage. So however you arrive at it, the idea is that a past life coming up for a person working with a facilitator, for example, a past life is going to come up that has some type of setting of the time period that they were in, like who they were. Was it male, female? Was it a child? What was going on? And then it kind of shows what was going on. What was the story arc, the challenges? Was there an untimely death, that sort of thing? And then there's a lesson that is able to be pulled from that past life that pertains to the person's present moment, to be like, here's some karma from this past life, and here's where you're balancing it out by understanding what happened back then, or maybe some choices that you made, and here's how you can actually heal that and release that and move forward. So oftentimes if people have like irrational fears, where they're like, I don't know why I'm like scared of this thing, could have been a past life death or some scare in a past life.
Interesting. My sister is irrationally afraid of mayonnaise. I wonder if that one has anything to do with it. I'm like, it's such an interesting one. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It really actually more so brought to mind that book, The Body Keeps the Score, where they linked the generational trauma all the way back. Now they have actual studies on the Holocaust survivors and then their grandkids and their grandkids of trauma, of emotions stored. They're not theirs in this lifetime, but from generations, right? So I know it's not apples to apples. We're talking about this soul, this person's past life, but it did kind of put me in mind of that. I don't know that I'd made that connection before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Yeah, right. I think a lot of times, like these things, they do get stored in the body and the muscle fascia, but there's this idea too of it getting stored in what's known as the causal field, the causal body. This idea that there's energetic layers outside the physical body. And so what I find that's really cool about all this for everyone listening, whatever the challenges in life, you can address things on a physical level, but you can also address it on the spiritual, metaphysical level, and kind of like work together in that way.
right. Yeah. And it's all about that self-discovery and taking your next steps, which I know astrology is such a great tool for that as well. We just had a full moon. And so I always do those rituals. All right. This light, this illumination is giving me this chance to review and what's no longer serving in a general way. So tell us about your, like, you go to this class, you had so much fun. It's your favorite thing to learn. And you're very naturally, you just want to talk about astrology all the time. You won't meet Eric without talking about it at some point, I'm sure. So for people listening that are like, kind of like, I don't know about astrology. Sometimes it feels real, sometimes it's not. How do you explain astrology, what it is, how you can use it, or maybe how you use it? You call yourself a boardroom astrologer. So we're going to need to know more about that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's this old timey joke that the only thing that's certain in this reality is death and taxes. And it's kind of the joke that you never know how things are going to go, how things are going to spin. But the cosmos, the planets, the sun, the moon, they follow a predictable order without fail. We know exactly where the planet Saturn, for example, is going to be 60 years from now without fail. And so I kind of use it as a metaphysical sense of journalism, if you will, where it's paying attention to both the history of, okay, these planets here that are doing the thing in the current astrology, these planets have a certain orientation and a certain zodiac sign up in space. When was the last time that happened? Oh, wow, that hasn't happened in 700 years. That's really rare. What happened back then? And so there's some digging, but then also looking at the characteristics of what those planets mean, what it means when they're in those zodiac signs, and sort of just like piecing together a story and understanding the mythology behind astrology and really just illustrating that. And that's what astrologers will present as horoscopes. There's collective horoscopes, which is, hey, here's what's going on in the world, and this is how it affects us on a transpersonal, greater collective level, but also you'll feel this personally too. But then, of course, there's also horoscopes and doing personal readings that get deeper into the personal realm of things with people. And I think because astrology is an expression of art, there's an argument even that certain sciences, being a dentist, for example, that's an art expression, because if it was exact science, you would never hear the saying going and getting a second opinion about something. So there's always going to be a little bit of abstract interpretation based upon those things. And the reason I call myself a boardroom astrologer is just because my approach, I'm very Capricorn, which is all about business and structure. And let's think about the long term and making decisions. And so when people come across me, a lot of times they're feeling kind of stuck. They're looking for clarity. So we're looking at, here's the bigger picture of what's going on, but here's how we can make some executive like decisions, like to be the CEO of your own life, of how you can move in a more positive, soulful, fulfilling direction.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, I love an astrology reading. So what do you said people feel stuck or frustrated? I know I heard you say that too, but when someone's like, okay, I think I'm going to do an astrology reading, do you find it's very intentional like that? Like, hey, I'm stuck, help me. Or is it more curiosity, or like what kind of things are people coming to ask you?
Yeah, typically, and I think this is what's great, that every astrologer is different, just like people in different professions have different skill sets and effective abilities. What I do find for me is that people are they feel like they're in an in-between zone. They're trying to understand what comes next, like they're not fully satisfied with what they're experiencing. Maybe there's a little bit of like frustration or burnout. And so they're really just searching for clarity. They're basically saying, like, I know my circumstances can improve. And then they're like, oh, wait, astrology has answers. Let me see guidance and see what that looks like. I also do get people that they're just ready to move forward and they have a vision and they have some clarity and they're kind of just like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. Can you help me with the timing of it? Does the astrology support it? It's kind of like a big move. I want to do it. And sometimes I have to, unfortunately, give them the bad news and be like, well, actually, this is the time for doing this. And then that part comes, and sometimes it's like, nope, here's the validation. Like, you're not crazy, like what you're feeling pulled towards. And then here's some insight on how you can take this and be a rock star with it.
Do you have stories of people who they've done a reading with you and then it just completely shifted? They used the information you gave and then they found their paths of success, or it shifted their direction. Like, were you able, did you have
Yeah.
with people long enough to see some of that?
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite stories, actually, there was this woman that I was explaining to her that I was getting that there was a sense of purpose in life and trajectory for helping kids. And she was like, I don't really feel like connection to that. Like, I'm over here doing this thing, like that's not even on my radar. And she was basically a healthy skeptic. And I felt really confident in what I was seeing in the reading, and then just gave her the messaging. And then I got a message from her, an email from her a few months later, and she's like, Eric, I want to validate the reading that I was kind of skeptical about, because I'm actually a yoga instructor now at a local children's hospital, and that's what I do now. And she's like, I never would have thought that would have been the thing. So that's an example of just something that just completely shifted for someone. That's one of my more favorite stories, to be honest.
It's cool. So, gosh, I just want to keep asking questions. We're going to get to the collective
Yeah, of course.
So let's say you pull up my chart for the first time and you don't know me. What is it that you're looking at that's going to be, this is going to help this person the most? Like, what's your thought process there? What's the most bang for my buck? If you're going to be like, Katie, you want to think about these things. What are the things?
Yeah. The main thing that I'm always going to look at in every reading is definitely in a person's natal chart. And there's a technical piece to this, but I'll explain, is where are the nodes at? There's a thing called the North Node and the South Node in astrology. And you can think of the South Node as the been there, done that. Your soul is so comfortable and used to that. You've experienced it in past lives. Those things are going to show up naturally in life, but it's going to bring up some heaviness in those areas. It's not going to feel the best. So it's like thinking of it like whatever zodiac sign that is in for that person, regardless of what their sun sign is, they're going to feel the darker shades of that zodiac sign, if you will. Like, for example, if someone has a South Node in Taurus, they might have issues around putting in effort or self-worth or being a little lazy in life. Whereas like the North Node is like the North Star. It's like, here's what your soul is wanting to consume and express and evolve into. It's the expression that you haven't like experienced before. So really the nodes tell me has a soul been and where are they going? And to me, I can literally make a whole astrology reading, at least half of it, like out of just where the nodes are at in someone's chart.
Okay. Well, yeah. I feel like you should use the example of the North Node in Taurus in the 4th house.
Okay. Yeah. I flipped it because you're the opposite, right? Yeah. And it's cool because you and I have talked before, right? I've done like a mini reading for you. And North Node in Taurus in the 4th house, really, it reminds me of, this is like a cross-referencing, but it illustrates a picture. In the tarot, there's the Queen of Pentacles, and it's a very luxurious sort of like, she's got her garden in the backyard, in the back of her home. She's feeling very prosperous. The North Node in Taurus is always going to bring up that feeling that feminine prosperity, luxury sort of feeling. And so in the 4th house, it's meant to be felt emotionally, but also physically too, like having your own version of the mansion, if you will, but also using the feminine intuition to how you manifest and attract that. Because Taurus energy, it's the bull in the zodiac, and the bull grazes on the pasture. It doesn't have to go far to get what it needs. It's the grass is right there. For those that are listening that have evolved out of the religious routes, like, it is the positive expression of the Garden of Eden, where it's actually good to like eat the fruit and enjoy things in that way.
Interesting. I love it. Thanks.
You bet.
Self-serving, right?
Little bite-sized reading.
I love it. Okay, so I want to ask you one more thing about, you had mentioned something about someone coming to you and saying, hey, I'm at this place. Is this good timing? And I immediately thought of Mercury retrograde, which while we're recording this, we literally just started. It's almost a month long. It ends on my birthday. So you're welcome, everyone. You can celebrate my birthday and Mercury retrograde ending. But tell us what that's like and what would you advise during this time?
I mean, the main thing during the Mercury retrograde for people is it's a review period. It's a reflection of the life that you've been living for the last 3 months, the last officially 88 days. And I know that can be a lot. Life moves fast. And so sometimes it's good to go back and look at the last 3 months of photos on the phone or social media posts and just reflect what's been coming up for the last 3 months, because It's an opportunity to look at and review some of those choices that were made. So it becomes this karmic thing. So it's just more looking within. It's like an inward reflection. And so it's in the sign of Cancer. So this is definitely dealing very much with the personal life, reflecting on the emotions, reflecting on family situations. Do you feel like your foundation feels solid, especially emotionally? And I know Mercury gets that bad rap as, oh no, here's Mercury retrograde. And a lot of that is just because we live in a world that's based a lot on communication, right? Interconnectedness. And so when Mercury's retrograde, that is where sometimes forget to cross the T's, dot the I's, mistakes get made. So it's an opportunity to just pay more attention to things. A lot of times they'll get this thing of like, hey, don't make big purchases because something could happen. But I had to buy a car one time during a Mercury retrograde. I'm like, oh boy, okay, here we go. But what ended up happening was just there was a problem with the title and whose name was on the title a few months later, but it was just a simple clerical fix. It wasn't the worst thing in the world. So it's more just trying to pay attention when it comes to the outer world stuff and communicating and making decisions. But all in all, it's a time for just self-reflection. It's a 3-week process. So yeah. And then the 3 weeks when it's over, then it's like integrating the reflections. What did you learn about yourself more personally? And then integrate those things, like make those changes in life.
That self-reflection. I mean, know
Yeah.
thyself, right? That's our goal. We need to,
Yeah.
yeah, so we can show up and fulfill our purpose and such. So one of the things we're kind of moving into talking about are our astrology transits. So we've got our natal chart, like this is when you were born, this is what stays the same, but then everything's always moving. And so I know you've been thinking a lot about the collective, about looking ahead for future generations. And so I want to have you talk a little bit about what can we expect for the rest of 2026? What could astrology lend us to consider, and some themes maybe, or transits if you want to share those. And then I'd love for you to talk a little bit about this vision, the collective, the message that you are trying to get out there. And I hope that's
Absolutely.
meant for someone to hear here.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bet. Yeah. And I mean, you're right. The collective astrology, it's always moving, right? Energy is always moving. And so there's a collective aspect to it. And then that current astrology, of course, impacts that snapshot of the divine blueprint that people are, what their natal chart is, and what cycles they're going through personally. But from a collective front for 2026, it's about to get hot. It's about to get hot in here, steamy. And I know it might have seemed hot already. And what I mean by that is there's intensity. It's people wanting to be loud, wanting to be vocal, wanting to express themselves and their opinions more than ever. This is where people can kind of get short-tempered and not think things through, unfortunately. So that's kind of the lower end of it. But on the positive end of it, we're stepping into an era of what I would call interdependence and community, where it's kind of like be the authentic expression of who you are, bring your spiritual side in to kind of wash away any conditioning of how you were taught to kind of fit in, and just show up in your authentic vibration and kind of be okay with asserting that and overcoming any hesitation or caring about people liking it and just seeing who shows up. Sometimes what astrology and even human design teaches us is our uniqueness, where we can feel like odd, like we belong in the land of misfit toys or something. But it's like, well, just find your community, your own version of the other people that used to feel like misfit toys, but somehow you all bond and band together in the most beautiful way. And so that's going to come from a person just being congruent with themselves and showing up and wearing their heart on their sleeve and finding the love of life and just being really creative. And so that's really what we're stepping into right now. There's some other stuff I can, of course, mention that's more towards the end of the year. Come in the fall, that's October, November. It's just people an opportunity to pay attention to really, it's going to be a deep karmic review of what's going on in relationships and what's being valued. the relationships that we're in, they should really feel aligned. They should feel like, wow, this is like kind of heaven on earth, and like going through that transformation to bond really deeply and find that love and connection. And so that could be with a person, that could just be with life in general, it could be through spirituality, but there is like a lot of astrology that's actually forming that is saying like go find love. It kind of feels like Grease, like summer loving, like the musical, like as we're in the
Not
summer.
now.
Yeah, it's happening now. And it's just going to continue through the rest of the year. And it's kind of this cool thing that it's like, well, like I said this to someone earlier this year. I was like, when stuff is like going down in the world, it sure would be nice to have someone like a love romantic partnership thing going on, like where you're in kind of like your love bubble. And then as the world's doing its thing, it's just stay out of the fear paradigms and just do your thing. It's like Neo Trinity in the Matrix. I'm a big Matrix nerd. And that was even before I even like fully looked at the astrology this year. So that's kind of how I'm carving it up and seeing it for the rest of 2026. Yeah. And as far as the vision part, like for me, the motivation behind sharing astrology, helping people, coaching, helping people heal, all this is just this idea that we're going through a really huge evolution as a collective, and that I don't think it's an overnight fix, and that I do see and sense that there is this new wave, these younger generations of children that are being born on this planet, and they're already here, that they're going to be taking the reins someday and be those future leaders. And so if we as adults can, think long term and think legacy impact like that, what's the mark that we leave behind if we do our healing, if we pay attention to things, whether it's astrology or human design, just something that's helping us to be the highest expression of ourselves, not from a place of like we're broken or trying to fix ourselves, but an authentic role modeling that gives permission to the younger generations to let them express their authenticity to the where they don't have to go through the same fear-based conditioning that a lot of us did in prior generations. And so that authenticity, it's the idea is there's less baggage, therapy, that sort of thing to unpack when they're older, and then they can just get on with their sense of purpose and mission as they get older.
Yeah. How can we practically help that process? Like, how do you see that going?
Well, right now, there's some really cool astrology that's happening, and I'm very akin to this because I was born with something similar where whatever the avenue is, right? Because it's trust the path illuminating. Because I know a lot of times there's a belief that we have to go out and make it happen, right? But there is a sense of things like law of attraction and letting the path illuminate and going into more joy and happiness and staying out of fear and worry, that when you aren't in a state of worry as an adult, the people that you're around in the environment, especially the younger generations, it creates an epigenetic environment, a sense of safety for them to kind of relax. And then their central nervous systems aren't tight and contracted, and they feel like it's safer to be curious and explore. And so some of the practicality is thinking of it like this, that kids may go to school for a certain amount of hours a day and learn something, but they're also learning epigenetically from the environments that they're in the home. So the frequency that the parents, for example, are putting out, that matters very much so. So that to me, that is the most practical example, because everything is always happening in the present moment, right? So it's like what's unfolding in the environment, I think is really important. There'll be, and there are, it's already happening, right? There's conscious schools forming to help children and educate them on things that aren't being taught in schools. There's people that I know personally that are seeing if there's certain kids that have these beautiful gifts such as telekinesis, being able to move objects. So there's pioneers that are doing things that are giving space for other forms of expression for the younger generations too. And so some of it is following the curiosity that if you have an idea or a vision or want to be a part of something like that, if it resonates, to just go seek that out to see how you can help.
That's beautiful. And I see that that aha moment happened for me when you were sharing that, because it's really a good reminder to put your own mask on first. You got to take care of yourself, and that's how you take care of others, right? So me as a parent, I know my kids read energy, and they didn't practice that. They didn't try, but I went through a separation last year, and there was lots of times that I was a hot mess, sad. I didn't know the answer. And I had to surrender to not having an answer and not being able to physically present myself as the mom they always knew, that just kind of did what I was supposed to do, took care of them. Now we bring emotions into it. And there were so many moments that I was trying to get away, to go cry and be emotional, to not burden my kids. And then they would feel pulled to come into that room for some reason, right? Because they feel like something's off, something's going on. Like they feel that. And so I learned that in real time. Oh, these kids are tethered to me, even if we're in different rooms. Like they feel what I'm going through. And then for me, it ended up being like, okay, that I have to surrender to the lesson they can learn from their mother is me allowing my emotions, and that's okay. Trying to just, I don't have any answers. I don't know what's going to happen next. And sometimes adults don't have the answer, and letting them see that. And looking back on it, I'm very proud to have been vulnerable around them. But in the moment, I was like, oh no, I shouldn't do that. Right.
Sure.
But looking back on it, it just reminded me of what you were saying on how you can show up. If I can relax, if I can be who I am, no matter what my circumstances are, and just show up authentically, like that is showing the future generations it's okay for them to be authentic. And the other thing that came to mind, I had my daughter do an episode of the podcast when I was just getting started. I had just a mini interview with each type, and she's a sacral generator. And at the end of the episode, I said, so what do you wish adults knew? And she just said, sometimes you can listen to us and we might have something good to share. And that told me a couple of things. Like, okay, first, she knows that she's got value too. Fantastic. But also, it also showed like there's a part of her that sees or feels like she's not heard. So if we can just give them space, it could be such geniuses. I've learned so much from having kids, I'm glad this came up. That was really a neat thing for us to think about. And it is practical. If you can stop hiding from your kids and just be who you are, I feel like that authenticity makes a big difference in helping them feel confident to do the same.
Absolutely. I mean, it's pretty common belief in spiritual community, that souls, kids choose their parents. They choose those soul contracts before they incarnate here. So yeah, I think we can unapologetically be more of our authentic selves and just be that expression.
Yeah. All right. Anything about your journey as an astrologist and all of the spiritual practices that you do that have really surprised you and they just come to mind? What are some lessons that you've learned through this journey of your career?
Personally, what I've learned a lot is really to just not be so hard on myself, to not be my own worst enemy. It's great to seek these things out as tools for awareness, but I had to kind of uncouple and also sometimes put the work down, put the proverbial sword down of self-development and trying to get there, because it would almost become an unconscious validation of saying like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing good enough, by virtue of where I would sometimes push myself to do certain things, even on a spiritual level with things like astrology and human design. And so that would also be an invitation for me though, too, to be like, okay, this is feeling off. what is it that I have learned about myself that I can go back to and remind myself about that, right? Because if we spend years and condition patterns of expression of self or fitting in, it stands to reason that light bulb moments are great and we can have these epiphanies and just these monumental shifts, but sometimes it's okay. We forget and we need a minute to unlearn certain ways of being our behaviors and to go back and look at like, oh yeah, what was that thing that I learned about myself that would be the remedy to this, the remedy to being so hard on myself. And it's like, oh, there it is. And so for me on a personal level, I've my North Node's in Taurus. You and I are close in age, so we're going to have the nodes in the same places. And it's in my first house, my identity, the rising sign. And so a lot of it's just being this more Taurus-like expression that's more embodied and slower moving and knows his worth and his talents and abilities and just kind of takes action, but is doing it from a very solid grounded place, not this like opposite South Node in the seventh house end of getting all out of harmony with myself and trying to move too quick and Scorpio like of blasting off to every sunset. And I use the metaphors of imbalance and sunset because seventh house is where we learn to balance out. It's where the sun sets. And so, yeah.
It reminds me very much of the lesson of the open ego center with your human design. We both have that as well. Needing to our value and also just that more gentle approach that you were sharing about, just allowing things to be, allowing things to happen and unfold and letting clarity arrive instead of chasing after it too.
Yeah. And when I was reflecting on this in just the last day, just because it's taken some time, but I feel like for me personally, there's some role modeling in that too, because I think it's the places where men often will struggle with their moods or their attitudes around certain things that this type of work doing this for myself to not fall into those traps because it's like, well, beating the self up, feeling guilty or punishing the self, that doesn't feel good, right? You're not going to be in a good vibe, good mood from that. And so for me doing this work, it becomes like, I know what it's like as a man, like, and I've seen what it takes to work myself out of that. So there's some pioneering, I think, that's happening that's a little bit more of a long game too. And that just came through. And I thank you for letting me share because I've been trying to understand. I'm like, there's something coming through with men again lately, and that keeps coming back of more specific offerings to men, just because the audience I serve, it's men and women. I do readings for kids too, but with it being this more spiritual type world, women tend to gravitate towards it more. So
yeah, I see that's true too.
yeah.
Okay, so I had this idea for you since you're a sacral, right? So just ask you some lightning round questions.
Sure.
It may or may not fit, but I'm gonna see how that goes if you're
Do it.
to it. So we'll start with coffee or tea,
Coffee,
sunrise or sunset,
sunset,
best astrology placements.
Pluto and Scorpio.
What'd you say?
Pluto and Scorpio.
Pluto and Scorpio. Okay. Okay. So tell us best daily practice you've ever done.
Intentional showering, washing energy residue off too, not just the skin.
Wow. Okay. That's fun. All right. And then of everything that we've talked about today, what's the thing people need to remember?
Just be yourself. Light, shadow, whatever. Sometimes you'll be in your villain era, you'll be someone's villain, or you'll feel like the villain. It's just all part of the experiment of learning about yourself. You need the contrast to kind of know what you're not, to know more of who you are. It's just peeling back the layers.
I might have stole my last question with that answer because that was great. But I always like to leave towards the end of our conversation sometimes my planned questions and kind of where the conversation goes doesn't finish things up. So I just wonder if you could take a moment. You can take as long as you want and take a few breaths. See, is there something that's been left unsaid, even if it has nothing to do with what we talked about today, or a message that you want to share that needs to be said out loud, or both? And I'm just going to let you talk after you have some time, and then we'll wrap up and tell people how they can connect with you.
Okay, got it. It's sort of a derivative of what we already spoke about with the younger generations, but it really is just be there for the kids. Just show up for them. A lot of times as adults, we get busy, we have things going on, and we want to be responsible, and so we want to shoulder the load. But sometimes we're taking on responsibilities that the universe, God, goddess, whatever higher power you may believe in, can actually help with that, to just be more lighter and be more present, like with the kids. That the universe has a way of figuring things out, like trusting our intuition, that we don't always need to take the action. We don't need to know 7 years ahead. Like just following the intuition in the moment becomes an alignment of our spiritual self embodied. And I think that's really what kids just want to experience. It's like the safety of that. And my theory is, like, for a lot of teenagers and younger generations out there, that's being reported that they're feeling a lot of times low vibe, even feeling depression in younger ages. I think a lot of it is because their soul is, it's like a basketball game. It's like there's two halves, and the last half, the third and fourth quarter, can be way different than the first half. And so they incarnate here and they're like, wait, I thought it was going to go like this, but the first half of it is kind of watching the ending of some monumental cycles happening on Earth. And so I think the more that we can embody that higher frequency in the way that I'm describing, the more it serves as hope that it is going to get better. And I think, to me, that's what would break my heart more than anything, is anyone, regardless of their age, falling into fear or worry that life's not going to get better right now, because there's so much promise on the horizon. Just hang in there and just keep showing up for yourself and your loved ones, because it is getting better. And there's pockets, there's moments of it, and sometimes you feel like, yay, we made it, it's going to be forever, and then it like takes its like dip, or it goes sideways. But we're going to get to more of a stable place more so by the end of the decade, and kind of into the new normal. We're going through those tougher years right now in the astrology. And then of course there's the reset, right, coming in human design next year too.
Yeah. That's good. Good reminder. And I was also thinking, yeah, our inner child needs all of that too. Right.
Yeah.
So whether you have kids, get to be around kids or not, taking care of for you as well. So the individual.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And it's an important point. I know a lot of people, not everyone has kids, right? And it is. It is. I think you nailed it. It's the inner child, because a lot of times there's a logical framework where it's like, oh, is the world really safe to place to bring kids into? Is that really a good move? And that's valid, but joy oftentimes, and especially in this astrology, like, is the answer. And joy can seem like socially irresponsible because the world's going through a lot of paradoxical issues right now. But again, this goes back to the faith and the trust, the evolution of things, that the universe, the world, has a way of righting wrongs, and like shifts and endings and new beginnings and new possibilities. And so when we get into fear and worry, it's like the physiology of it. It's like the brain and the chemicals that are firing, the contraction of like the eyes. Like when we're worried and we're in fear, we start to constrict and we don't see the possibilities or the solutions to the problem. And joy is almost like saying, like, wait, is there even a problem in the first place? Because I think sometimes we invent our own problems with this thing. And so that's what's great about tools like human design to astrology, right? Is it can get us out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Anything else unsaid that you'd like to share?
No, just everyone go be prosperous, whatever that looks like for you, go create.
Cool. Awesome. And I am so excited that you decided to give our listeners a little discount on a first astrology reading. So tell us about that offer and anything else. I know you're on TikTok, on Instagram, all those things. So how can people find you, and tell us a little bit about your offer as well?
Yeah, so my website that also has my social media connected to it is astrologybyericrosen.com. That's astrology by ericrosen.com. And you can search me out on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Astrologer Eric Rosen. And the offering, there's coupon code STARS, STARS, and that'll give people, it's 30% off my one-on-one astrology readings. And so astrology is there, whatever, if a person just wants to know more about themselves, or they're feeling stuck, or they want to know what comes next, that's the way to go. And then I'm stoked too for those that I know a lot of people like to get away and actually go immerse themselves. And so I've been doing more spiritual retreats lately. So I have one coming up in Mount Shasta, September 14th through the 18th. So stoked about that. And I can share info on that too.
Few openings for that still. That's
Yeah.
so beautiful. So yeah, we'll put the link in there as well. Cool. Well, Eric, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Okay. Until next time. And for those of you listening, thank you for listening to the end. We will have a conversation starter. We'll talk a little bit about astrology this week in the Inspired by Design with Katie Rupert Facebook group. So check that out. And we'd love for you to share what you think about this episode. If you have questions for myself or for Eric, you can use the Google form. And my promise is that I will give you answers to your questions on future episodes. So, all right, until next time, bye. Thanks for tuning in to Inspired by Design with Katie Rupert. If today's episode sparked something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Share your takeaways, subscribe, or even leave a review to help others find the show. For more tools and insights, visit my free Facebook group. And until next time, keep embracing exactly who you are and move forward one inspired action at a time.